And nothing's off the table when we talk about this game. Carlton versus Essendon. Lexus of Blackburn key moments. Take us through those, Jimmy, because it was a match for the majority of the game. It looked like Carlton were going to win easily, but Essendon came home strong.
Yeah, you're right. And Carlton fans were wriggling in their seat just like you were before when we raised Luke Beveridge's name. But in the first quarter, by the end of the first quarter, we actually thought Carlton were going to smash Essendon. Adam Saab, what we've been asking for, get up involved in the game, kicks the first goal on the run. And we love to see that from the Blues. And the Blues ball use was as good as we've seen, kicking the ball inside forward 50. Kerno getting the handball out the back from Motlop, kicks Carlton's fifth of the quarter. And we're going, geez, how good the Blues looked. At Koning was magnificent again. He had 23 touches and a goal, and that was one of them during the game. 2 metre Peter, how tall is he? 2 metres, giving Essendon a foothold with a goal on a half-time siren, which Essendon, they just kept chipping away and chipping away. Guelphy, I thought, was just relentless in his efforts and got rewards and really brought his teammates into it. Again, Peter Wright kicking another goal. And Nate Caddy's soccer, which set up Jay Gresham here, was magnificent. He loves the soccer skills as well. Blake Acres, his ball use hasn't been sensational during the first half of the season, but kicked that vital one there. And Zach Williams, how's this? A salute for the crowd. Get involved, get around me, bang, slams it through as he snuck out the back. And Gresham and the Bombers, they just couldn't be denied or be put away. They just kept coming, which I admired from Essendon, especially this week and last week. They've got a lot of young players in the side, and they keep chipping away. And Nick Martin with the candy, the football card there, selling candy and kicking the goal, make the margin 12 points. And then we had Dersma slotting through with the bow and arrow, and geez, there was, some puckering up going on from Carlton fans. They were nervous, but they hung on with some key moments in the last couple of minutes. So as we look at the scenes there, it felt like more relief from Blues.
I think that's probably fair enough, and I think their fans would agree. So Carlton tomorrow or the next day will have a review, and the big question around this review, like it has been all year, Hurdy, will be how they kicked the ball inside 50 and how they delivered it to their forwards and what their connection was like, which brings us to a very early but important edition of The Word of Hurd.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom. Well, earlier in the year, well, all year really, I think Carlton have been criticised the way they've moved the ball. The first quarter was a different side than what we've seen most of the year. The way they moved the ball, took the ball off the line and were able to get the ball inside 50 and lower their eyes. Look at the stats here. The one that I think is really important is that marks inside 50 in the first quarter compared to the rest of the game. My question, Jimmy, is why can't Carlton do this when the pressure comes on? Essendon's pressure in that first quarter wasn't as good for the rest of the game, and that's one of the reasons. But under pressure, Carlton kept reverting back to kicking long, to kicking high, to going deep in their forward line when they should be lowering their eyes. You can see what happens when they do. Let's look at a bit of the vision of the first quarter. They're just lowering their eyes here. Those little kicks just the top of the 50, not blazing away, finding a free target, taking a lead up. It looks so easy when they're doing it. I just don't know why they do it more often, Jim.
Yeah, it's the movement as well for the footy, because now you know you're going to get used. So we saw a lot more of the leading patterns coming. Look at that, there's separation there. There's 2 players going in different directions. So it's on the leading players.
And now this is later.
And
later
this
in
is
the game,
later.
the pressure comes on.
Yep, Walsh trying to back himself there. You just still want to hit it up. If that's the team focus. I know he kicks these ones and it gets the crowd up and about, but the first quarter they were so good at hitting up leads. I would just love to see Charlie turn around, just try and hit one up on a 15-metre lead. And then as the game wears on, the pressure as the fatigue sets in, goes back to the long blast.
And what Essendon were doing, they started the start of the game as folding back as a defence, which allowed the Carlton players to hit up. Well, under pressure, the long balls went in and the Essendon players were folding back to defend the hotspot and they were winning the ball. And Essendon got a lot of their attack from that deep in 50, and that's why they got themselves back in the game. If I'm Carlton, yes, you'll make a mistake on that kick now and then, but keep taking it.
Did you see enough from Carlton tonight, either of you, to suggest that they can play finals and actually compete this year?
I don't think they'll play finals, but what I saw in the first quarter is a team that were doing it really well, and when they do it, they make it very hard to defend. You have to make the opposition defend, and they made them do it, and I like the way they played, but to be honest, they're 20, I think they're, 5 wins for the season. They're not playing finals, even though they're 10th on the ladder.
Jimmy?
Yeah, it had a good balance to it in the first quarter. We're highlighting the inside forward 50s, but then it actually allows them to get really proactive positioning behind the ball. They had a lot of intercept marks, which they're really good at, but the fact that they only did it for 1 quarter makes it difficult for them to say, yes, they're going to charge towards finals like they did a few years ago.
And what I think you see from the Carlton team is I think they can feel the pressure coming. Like as the game goes on and they're kicking the ball back to the opposition's rebounding from their defensive 50, you can just see the pressure coming on the players. And that really affects you, and it affected the way they played those last 3 quarters.
Zach Merritt is the captain of Essendon. He had an unbelievable start to the year, Hurdy, playing almost entirely in the midfield, but he's been flicked around now. Is Brad Scott and the Bombers, are they making the most of his strengths?
Well, I think they put him back to half-back in the last quarter against Richmond because of all the injuries that they had. He did reasonably well against Brisbane when they went back there, but he's a midfielder to me. That's his best position. Midfield forward, he gets the best from his kicks. I mean, when you're kicking from half-back, it's a lot easier kick than when you're kicking from the centre of the ground forward. I think he's up forward, and you can see when they really got in trouble after quarter time, he went back in the midfield.
Can't disagree with that, but I agree with the first point too. You think they had another debutant tonight, and you look at their back six.
Number 8 for the year.
Yeah, they're so inexperienced, or lacking at times a bit of ball use, because when you're inexperienced, you tend to take the safer option, which gets you trapped, and at least Merritt is willing to take that kick on.
I think that's why the Carlton win, you say, can they play finals? They were playing against an under-18 sort of back 6 against Essendon, really. It's a very young Essendon team who performed really well and admirably to be that close. But that's why I doubt whether Carlton can get there, because that's...
So you're unimpressed by the Blues, even though...
Well, I was impressed by the first quarter. But if really impressed, they would have rammed that home, and they didn't. They went back to their old style of play, and a lot of that was pressure from Essendon. But to me, it was a win by Carlton, a good win by Carlton, but not something that would excite me.
There's a flashpoint in the second half here. It's less of an MRO issue, because I think it's probably pretty clear that Sam Durham is going to get at least a week for this bump on Adam Cerra. Now, Adam Cerra stayed on the ground for 14 minutes after this incident, Jimmy, until he was taken off by the doctors. They conducted an HIA test, and he passed the concussion test, which means it's probably not going to be 3 weeks. It'll be 2 at most. That's the MRO side of things. From a medical perspective, I just find it bizarre that he stayed on the field after that sort of head knock.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we know the ARC recommends down to the bench, and there's been a lot lesser incidents where, players have bumped their head on the ground, they've come straight off. You'd assume that one, it's straight off. Do the head assessment as well.
What's he doing going in like that with his head there? I mean, I know it's weeks. I know Samuel has made a mistake and he shouldn't have gone in for the ball. But if 2 players go in the correct technique, that is not happening. We've moved past that. I know we've moved past that way. But if the Cherry goes in with the right technique, we have not got an issue.
So does Sam Durham go in with the right technique or not? I know he's slightly late.
Absolutely he did. When his hip turned... that's where the game, I wish it was the other way, and I wish we looked after. I'm glad we're looking after the head, but that is a technique issue that Sam Durham is going to get penalised for.
And we're not blaming Cherry here, but you've always taught, don't put your head where your backside belongs. The step over the football is actually okay, and it's not going past the football, but it's called stepping over it, which actually turns your body and protects yourself. They would have just collided, like shoulder on shoulder.
And so we now know that because Sam was second to the ball, he actually had to wait. He should have waited for Cherry to pick up the ball and either tackle him, but that's where we're up to.
Do the players not make those split-second decisions all the time, though? They wait just a fraction, just
No, I think the players now know that's what he should have done, but I think what we're saying is that if Cherry had used the right technique, no one would have had a problem.
Let's move to Busselton. I never thought I'd be saying that today, where North Melbourne and West Coast played, let's be honest, probably the worst game of the year. That first half was terrible to watch. In the end, North Melbourne got the result, which was really important for them. They had some performances late in this match that they did really well. But the old Alistair Clarkson came out with his frustration in the coach's box at one point again. Probably his biggest error here, Jimmy, was he didn't actually punch the wall and break the ball like at the MCG, but we all had that feeling watching the game. It was a difficult watch.
No, he kept the walls intact, and you're right. Busselton looked great, though, on the TV. It looked as good a surface as you'd want to get. Pretty good conditions, Hurdy, but the players didn't make the most of them. But what did we expect? Those two sides have been battling the last couple of years.
Particularly West Coast kicking 8 points before they kicked a goal. That was pretty poor. But, I felt for Alistair Clarkson in the game, and I think he did well not to break the wall. But the first goal here, Paul Curtis kicking the first goal of the game, and in beautiful conditions, as you can see. And great to see the game being taken around the country. Curtis running his open goal for North's 3rd straight, and you thought how far the Kangaroos. But then West Coast went on a kicking spree that 0 goals, 8. It was a hard thing to follow. The first goal there from the West Coast Eagles. But I thought what was impressive from North Melbourne here, Jimmy, for me, was they actually didn't play well, but the last quarter didn't lose their heads. Didn't try and chase the game too far. They battled and they got the game back on their terms. And, for me, it was a game that West Coast should have won, but North Melbourne started their history of Bunbury football with a win.
Yeah, and the last quarter, and I heard Jai Simpkin post-game saying it shouldn't be up until the last 10 to 15 minutes when the game's on the line to actually play with a bit of dare.
This mark here was...
this mark by Zerha is unbelievable. It was one of those ones where you go, who's marked it? Because the pack collapsed on him, but then to have the composure to finish was magnificent. But North Melbourne should take the last 10 to 15 minutes and lean into that a little bit more. I know that opens you up to get scored against, but instead of just absorbing the pressure constantly in your back 50 and going backwards and sideways, just take the game forward a little bit more. That's just another layer for them to work on.
And I thought their skipper was excellent when it really mattered in the last 15 minutes, kicking that goal at the end. He had a chance to sort of kick one before that, missed it, steadied that one, and it was a fantastic last 15 minutes from the skipper, and he really stood up.
Harley Reid, can we talk about him, Jimmy and Hurdy? Because there's a few moments towards the end of the game that he probably want back again.
Well, I think for him to be the player he wants to be, this sort of thing, I mean, this was when the game was in the balance, the ball needed to go forward again. You know, we're very hard on Harley, but that sort of thing, you can see how upset he was. If you're going to be the champion that he wants to be, they're the moments you have to take.
Yeah, it's a high bar to set, isn't it, for those sorts of moments? And they didn't run out the game well at all, West Coast, did they?
No, well, we highlighted Jai Simpkin. He was massive, and he's a lot more experienced than some of these younger West Coast mids. But I thought O'Sullivan had a really good game. Sheasel moved into the midfield in the last quarter, and McKercher coming back to his half-back role. I think they had more run in the game, but they were encouraged by it because when you play with a proactive mindset, people do run and join in the attack.
Yeah, and this is where the contested possessions and the game really took over. They really got the stats back on their side.
What do you make of Nick Larkey in the forward half, Hurdy?
Nick didn't have his best day, and I think he was well held for the day. I'd love to see Nick play in a team that had a really good forward line.
Good teammates around him.
Sorry, teammates around him, sorry, good midfield. This sounds ridiculous, but in the EPL you have a loan system. I'd love to see Nick Larkey loaned out for 1 year only, to a really good team with a really good midfield, and just see how good he could be, because I think he'd be an absolute superstar.
I thought Harry Edwards played a fantastic game. Yeah. The young emerging defender, 5 intercept marks on Larkey. But imagine a loan system in AFL.
It's for 1 year. Just
Go to Collingwood for 1 year.
Well, imagine going to Adelaide for a year, or imagine he was the Brisbane Lions right now. And just see him as a
late
star.
night hypothetical.
It is, well, it is late. So
I hope the social media crew cut you up right, because you get cut the
we want a loan system in the AFL, I heard he says.
Yes.
Charlie Comben got a knee to the scapula. He's sore. I've spoken to the club. He'll have scans tomorrow. So they officially said shoulder, but it's actually his scapula. So we hopefully it's not too bad, but it didn't look great, did it? They've got a game in Perth again next week against the Fremantle Dockers after they sold this game to that venue there in Busselton. So hopefully he's okay, Charlie Comben, an important player for them. Alexis of Blackburn, player of the week, no doubt, it's Max Holmes. What an amazing game he had. 40 disposals. Dangerfield and Jeremy Cameron kicked no goals between them. 13 disposals, no Bailey Smith. Max Holmes stepped up and had an absolute day, Jimmy.
He had a monster, and he reminds me of a former teammate of mine, wears the same number 9, James Kelly, who often gets overlooked as part of the generation that I was in. Was a star player for us, the Cats, for nearly 300 games for the Cats. Also got his 300th game at the Bombers when he went over there as well. But similar hairline, similar build, ability to run and carry and use the ball really well, can play half-back, midfield, can play sort of anywhere around the square, and I just see so much of him, and hopefully he has a long career like James Kelly.
No one tagged him though, Hurdy. No one went
No,
there.
he was free. I mean, we're going to go to Damien Harvey about equalising, but, you know, Tom Stewart and he were free, and it just looked like they needed to make sure someone was playing on them.
All right, this is the result on Saturday at GMHBA Stadium. It was wet, it was cold, it was ugly from a Gold Coast perspective because it was their lowest score since 2021, certainly their lowest score under Damien Hardwick, obviously as well. The margin was 24 points. It means the Cats are now 9-4. And we just mentioned Damien Hardwick and his decision to, I guess, play his way strategically. This is how he justified it at halftime.
We just equalised numbers forward of the ball. We sort of thought we'd be able to use or get some advantage in around the contest, but we sort of felt with their guys, they got back really quickly. So equalised those numbers. They're playing us another guy behind, but that's okay. We'll compete 6v7.
Yeah, what was happening was Max Holmes was sitting at the back of the stoppage and no one was rolling up to him. And then Stewart was sitting as a spare, and it just meant that Geelong loved to play with that spare, don't they? I mean, you've played in that system. They love to be able to get their ball movement going, but I was surprised that they left Max Holmes free at the back of the stoppage. And we'll see some footage here of Stewart just sitting there in the middle of the hole. You have to make sure you're halving that contest. They can't come in. That's where Geelong get a lot of it. This one here again, Stewart free. The Gold Coast player at the back should come up and play on Stewart, so he's not free. And it just means they don't take the mark, but it's too hard to score or they get their ball movement going. But the most surprising one was Holmes sitting off the back of the stoppage right now. Why there isn't a Gold Coast player rolling up there to take him on? No wonder he had 40 possessions. I mean, I don't think I've seen too often in elite AFL football letting a player like that play free at the back of the stoppage who's as good with the ball as he is.
In the first two edits that you showed, Hurdy, the real key that Geelong do is they let the spare be the spare. And by that, I mean that everybody else who has a direct opponent locks onto their direct opponent. So if it is Stewart, they're not getting absorbed by other players. So what they do is everyone else locks down. So when the high ball comes in, the spare knows they can go and attack it. They can be really aggressive. If then the numbers roll up or they put an extra, they're really happy whether it be Henry or Guthrie or somebody else. It was even Jack Martin who floated back at a time. But then the key is that person's really spare. So it's just the way you coach it and train it.
So Geelong are 5-2 against top 8 teams with a percentage of 121. They're playing some excellent football. But their injury list continues to be a source of discussion in the industry, I guess. That's probably the best way to describe it, Jimmy. Don't you laugh. Because Bailey Smith was laid out with hamstring tightness. He actually felt it the week before. He either hardly trained or didn't train at all during the week, depending on who you speak to. Either way, he clearly should have been a test on this injury list. The AFL has made it a point that the clubs should be honest with the fans around injury lists.
And I agree with they should be honest, but he's actually doing the warm-up, right?
So he should be test.
No, but if he's doing the warm-up, they think he's playing. That's how I generally think. If someone's doing the warm-up, you're in the team to play. Very rarely would you test half an hour before the game starts.
Do clubs not do that at all?
Well, very, very. I wouldn't have thought that in a game like that they'd be testing half an hour before on a hamstring. Maybe on something you get an injection with, but not a hamstring.
Yep.
In a grand final or a final, yes, but not that game.
That's fair.
Well, gentlemen, I'll throw this next one up to you. Speaking of Bailey Smith, of course, it's been reported he had a meeting. Well, Andrew Dillon drove down to meet Bailey Smith, Chris Scott, Steve Hocking and Andrew Mackey at Bailey's house. Unusual, normal for a CEO to go down there unless he's interviewing him for the COO role. I don't know.
Bailey Smith for COO.
I don't know. Well, I don't know.
Is that a possibility?
That's a twist.
That is a twist. That is a twist.
For you
Player and COO, that's quite a role.
I'll start with you, Hurdy. Of course, been a coach and involved in AFL clubs for so many years. Is that normal for the CEO?
I think that's unusual for the CEO to be interviewing, talking to a player about an issue. I think that's the head of football or there's the COO of the club. They don't have a COO at the moment. But I remember when I was getting in trouble at the AFL for criticising umpires or whatever, it was Andrew Demetriou, who's a COO or the head of football, who was actually doing the interviewing, not the CEO at the time. I think that to me is a stretch. I did read in the paper that Andrew Dillon's trying to get closer to star players. Why?
So Andrew Dillon, I believe, knows Bailey Smith's dad quite well, so they've got a personal relationship. Isn't it good management? Like, Bailey Smith is, whether he's the best player in the league or not, he is the biggest name in the game right now.
I think you want a discipline issue. You want separation between the CEO. It's a discipline issue, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest about it. It's a discipline issue for what he said. It's a separation from the CEO to discipline a player. There needs to be someone in between from a governance point of view. That's what I think.
What do you think?
I agree with Hurdy. It is a football issue, but maybe the fact that has Greg Swan taken up his new position, who is actually in charge of...
Well, Jeff Walsh has got the interim role, but I guess it's all very new. So there's still a period of transition.
And if there is a personal relationship, I can understand that, but I don't know. I haven't really heard of an AFL CEO going to a player's house to address the issues.
Yeah, highly unusual, and see if Bailey Smith's behaviour changes as a result. Certainly he is the most talked about player in the game. I think Adelaide's just about the most talked about club in the game at the moment. They're playing some exhilarating football, a fantastic win over Brisbane at Adelaide Oval. I remember I said to you a couple of weeks ago, Jimmy and Hurdy, if the Crows can win 2 of the next 3, Sydney, Brisbane and Hawthorn to come. They're doing really well. They've got 2. They've got Hawthorn and Tasmania this week. This win by 5 points went against all the stats in the last quarter, but they held on, and that's the most important thing. Yeah,
pretty heavy conditions as well, and it was a lot of goals from stoppage. But the most important thing for Adelaide, what they've improved after their first 4 or 5 weeks, where they were just free-flowing, scoring. Well, the opposition was free-flowing and scoring against them. They've tightened up their defensive profile, and when you have a look at their numbers, well, they're as good as you want to be. They're either first or second in pretty much all the key metrics. But the good thing too, Hurdy, is when you're a really good side and the opposition will come at you, but it's your ability not to get scored against. So we often see sides will pepper and you'll go, oh, what'd they score that quarter? 1 goal, no goals like Brisbane when they had 20 inside forward 50s, and you can force sides wide and you can absorb it because you know the opposition at different stages is going to have ebbs and flows against you.
You're right, Jimmy. It's against really good sides, you know you're going to lose momentum and they're going to have the ball, they're going to move the ball, but to have those stats when the momentum's going against you keeps you in the game when the rest of your game's not going well. Rory Sloane, I remember talking to him over the last year when Adelaide were going really well about Matthew Nicks, the coach, what's he like? And Rory kept saying he's a defensive coach, not an attacking coach, and we're starting to see that come out in the stats and the way they're playing. And I think Matthew Nicks at the moment is almost coach of the year, the way he's taken that side. Because really his job was on the line at the start of the year.
Finals or no finals, that was the line.
And his attack's been great with those 3 tools, but now the defence in line, it's a great effort.
And players have improved in their back six, so often we look at who's improved. Michael Annie looks like he's played 250 games. It's extraordinary. It reminds me of Ben Hart, who used to play there, who just came in and looked like he'd been playing for 10 years. Worrell's a much better player than he was last year. Keane's improved out of sight. And Malera, when he's fit, he's pretty sound back there.
So very impressed with Josh Worrell, the way he's just let the game go and reads the play really well.
So Adelaide, if they win 4 of the next 10, they play finals, and in their next 10, they've got West Coast, Richmond and North, and they've got games at home. They should be aiming higher, top 4, winning a final, winning a couple of finals.
Absolutely.
Who knows? Don't put a ceiling on it. They're playing great football, as you've articulated. The Brisbane Lions aren't, and you've led the charge on this, Hurdy. You've had a watch on them without being too critical. Where are they at the moment?
Well, I think they're still premiership contenders. I think they're still up there with the best teams in the competition. But what I was worried about a few weeks ago is where they'd get leads and they'd stop and they'd have quarters which were really, really poor. And if you look at the stats here, you know, in 2024, these stats are the first, second, third, fifth. The last few rounds have just been down. I think you get tired. You know what it's like. You win a premiership, you have a short pre-season, you win the first few games, you get off to a good start, and then you have that lull. I think they're good enough to pick themselves out of it, but they can't keep getting worse and worse and worse.
How do you pick yourself out of it?
Well, I think it comes down to the basics. I really think that if you watch Brisbane, they're very good for patches of the game. They're not good for a whole game. And that comes down to your fundamentals, setting up the ground properly and making sure you defend when the momentum's against you.
They would know they're slightly off their best, wouldn't they, at the moment?
They've admitted that. I've heard Lachie Neale speak in post-match games and say, look, we're trying to eradicate that, but you can't be up for 4 quarters for the whole entire season, even off the back of a premiership. But they got the stimulus. I thought they were better against the Crows, but they just couldn't score in the last quarter. They've got the Giants, who are a good side, who play pretty well up there at the Gabba, and then the Cats down in Geelong. Like, if you want to get stimulated for a 4-quarter effort, they're 2 good games to really get rolling before you head the bye.
The important thing for them is to win enough games to finish top 4, give themselves a double chance, and then they're a real chance this year.
Top 2 at the Gabba would be even better, but you're right, top 4 is the key. All right, after the break, Jimmy and Hurdy unpack the Giants' woes, and they are significant, plus Bevo's future, as we discussed before, and Hawthorn. Well, they've rediscovered their mojo, or have they? Stay with us on Footy Furnace. Well, Port Adelaide came back after the bye needing a win, and they got it against the Giants in Canberra last night. Zach Butters, Jimmy, was absolutely crucial to this. That's the margin there, 16 points. The Giants kicked 1 goal, 4 in the second half. But Zach Butters, after being tagged by Toby Bedford last year, was great from the very start to the very end. Yeah,
he was a monster all night. From start to finish, he was dynamic. That usual Zach Butters game where he can work his way from the inside to out, so contested possessions, but he takes ground off you as well. It's not the ball just being jammed on the boot. And along with Connor Rozee as well, they were really dynamic.
And Tom, is he definitely going to be there next year?
Zach Butters? Yeah. I think he'll be there next year.
Okay.
Yeah. But as a free agent at the end of next year, that's a big question mark. And I think clubs will have a crack at the end of this year as well.
Yep.
But I'd be surprised if he left at the end of 2025.
Yeah, he's just such an important player for them.
Important player,
yeah. When they didn't have him at the start of the year, they really did suffer.
Yeah, that's right. And Port need to keep him, that's for sure. The Giants, it's bizarre because they're 7 and 6. You know, they're inside the 8.
Yeah.
But they're not playing the football of a team that you would think would be challenging for a flag.
No, they're not.
Why is that?
Well, they're not. No, I think, I sit here and say I'm a massive Giants fan. I love watching them play. I love working with their players. I really got a lot of respect for their players individually. But the way they're playing at the moment, their team defence is really suffering. I just don't like the way they defend the ground. They let too many inside 50s. Their forward half intercepts are poor. Mid intercepts are poor. Their D50 intercepts are sensational. Their points against are okay. But their D50 intercepts are so good because of Connor Iden, Jack Buckley.
Can you just break this down, what that means, what that actually means?
Well, basically they're letting the ball get into their forward 50 too easily and too much. Because they've got 3 fantastic defenders down there, they can defend that back 50. But after a while, the damn ball breaks. And to me, it's about their midfield not really setting up the ground properly and not valuing defence enough. And as Jimmy's going to talk about, their midfield is not as star-studded as it was. So that when they've got the ball in hand, they're not as dangerous as they used to be. When the ball turns over, they're either not in the right spot or they're not desperate enough to cut the outlets off.
Yeah, and Hurdy's touched on it's a team defence. So this goes from forwards, mids, and to your high half-backs. And again, if Iden, Buckley and Taylor want lunch, you should go buy it for them. Because if you're a Giants player, because what they are doing is extraordinary back there. Buckley had over 20 touches on the ground. So we'll just play a couple of edits to highlight what Hurdy and I are talking about, team defence and where it can start from. So it mightn't seem like much at first. So this is a 20-second play. So you've got 20 seconds to get the field set up, be really ready and proactive. So as we see the clock ticking down, scrambling, they're doing everything they can to try and score, but also keep the ball in. It's scrappy. All right, things happen. A really good mark here by Bergman. Again, 20 seconds has elapsed. But look at this. That's already 5 metres off your direct opponent, and instead of playing the game in your front half, that ends up inside the opposition's forward 50. We just press pause here. So Bedford is going for it, and obviously we've got Darcy Jones, the kid with the lid, and McMullen. So the idea of small forward is to attack the contest, because that's what we're looking for. Inside forward 50 tackles, play the game in the front half, backs march up the ground. I've just highlighted Lockie Whitfield here. Watch how easy he just gives up on this release mark, and this is the problem for the Giants. This is the core problem. That's just jogging. Is there a real intent? And they're out. There goes the pressure for Port Adelaide. Again, you're defending the next one. Flip it on the other side. This is a leader of the opposition, a lot like Whitfield. Rosie, bang. That's a cross. Now you've got a forward 50 stoppage, or pretty much on the edge. You imagine now Taylor, Iden and Buckley setting up right up almost on the halfway point and turning the football over, because it's from a stoppage. It's a great place to set out. It means Hogan gets another look, and Green and all these other talented forwards. But if you just give it up, well, then the next kick is now in your half, and you're going to have to play this full ground drill of how do we make our way all the way back through.
Yeah, it's about creating the mess that the forwards need to put the pressure on, but the layers are set to actually, so your mids, then your forwards, then your backs can set up layers, but you have to then have the intensity. Layers are fine. Have the intensity to cut that out. And if you don't do that, you watch the best teams. Collingwood do not let the ball out of their forward line. It just doesn't get out because of the intensity of the way they defend.
I remember in 2017 being at the football, and I was lucky enough to be boundary riding, and I walked out at quarter time, and the Tigers were fantastic. They hadn't blown the Hawks out of the park, but all the key players were going to Castagna and Butler and Rioli, who was playing forward at this stage, because their pressure inside the forward 50 was elite. But then Alex Rance at that stage was going to the mids. Well done, because you've got to cut out the release to give the forwards a chance to chase and tackle, which then gives the backs a chance to march up. That's why every part is connected.
Do you think the star players of the Giants value enough what the average players of the Giants do?
Well, they've got to value the bit that Rosie just valued.
Do you think the star players value what the average players do? I don't mean average is in bad, I just mean that...
I think there is a team connection and they do value each other, but I don't think they actually understand quite yet how each part of the ground needs everyone working together. So that's when you go, oh, geez, I wonder why we get done, or I wonder why the opposition comes back into the game like the Swans did and the Lions did in the finals. It's really basics, things like that, playing the game in your front half and everyone going, do you know my little role here, like Rosie? If I cut this out, well, then I get Butters back into stoppage where he's been so dynamic. I get Georgiades another look inside forward 50. I give Radaglia and Alia a chance to actually set up and be really proactive. Once you get that, you become a really good football side.
And there's no greater lesson than what happened to them in the Swans final and the Lions final, where they got beaten from positions they should never lose from.
Yeah. All right, the Giants are a watch. Great analysis, Jimmy. Well done, Hurdy. At 7 and 6, they've still got a position where they can have a good season, but there's certainly some warning signs. Hawthorn, there were some warning signs the previous 3 weeks. They lost 3 games in a row, but they turned it on against the Western Bulldogs. The margin was 22 points. Hurdy, you've been very big on their contest and their pressure work. Did they find it again against the Dogs?
Absolutely. I think that, we talk about pressure. I think the pressure was really what we saw on the weekend. Listening to Sam Mitchell after the game, talking about the fact it wasn't just tackles that it was working on the pressure. It was little things around the game that they got right. And their tackling was back to where it should be, as you can see here. But it's the little things about the pressure, the way they set up the ground. Exactly the things we're talking about the Giants were doing, Hawthorn were doing. And I think it's a real credit to Sam Mitchell and his coaching group that they're basically able to get Hawthorn back to those pressure numbers and tackling numbers. And, I suppose ask the questions about the Bulldogs, but I think if you can get the Bulldogs at the contest or get near them at the contest and beat them in that area or get near them in that area, then you can be better around the ground there, and that's what Hawthorn did. Yeah,
and stoppage structure is really important against the Dogs. We highlight Richards, Bont, all those stars through the midfield, but if you can score against them and then restrict them, which is a key part of the game anyway, the Dogs are 1 and 8 when they're outscored at stoppage. So you've got to actually still challenge and test them. You can't go complete shutdown because then they'll get proactive. But getting that balance right around the contest, depending how many numbers you want there at a stoppage, like a ball up or a throw in.
The Bulldogs just didn't feel like they fired the shots they needed to fire, did they? It just didn't quite. And you look at who they've played so far this year and who they've beaten, they're not quite what we thought they were 3 weeks ago. We were pumping them up 3 weeks ago. I just don't feel they're quite what we thought they were.
Yeah, what are they? They're 1 and 6 against top 8 teams this year with a percentage of 91. which brings us to the Luke Beveridge question. I'm not saying he's the wrong guy at all. In fact, I think he's probably the right guy. But he's spoken on a number of occasions that he's not going to go to another club. They're 6-6. What gives you the confidence, or the Western Bulldogs the confidence, that Luke Beveridge is the right man and the Western Bulldogs have improved from last year? Like, from here, they could easily miss finals. We don't think they will, but at 6-6, the season's sort of at an interesting point.
It is. My view is that they'll get better and they'll make the finals. And what I also think is what is out there that is better than Luke Beveridge, and I don't think there is. And I think he's got that group at certain times playing the way they need to play and really good football. On the weekend, they didn't play it, but I would back Luke Beveridge in from here through the finals. They're going to be a finals team and do some damage in those finals. Yeah,
and they've got a nice run to come as well. It certainly does open up their fixture in the back half of the season. We do expect him to re-sign. It's just an interesting one. If you're not going to re-sign him 8 weeks ago, why re-sign him now?
Yeah, I think there's momentum built. It felt like at the start of the year they were almost sussing each other out. Do you want me? Do I want to be there? I think the feeling is that they want each other.
All right. Left foot snap! Okay, Sunday Snapshots time. Jimmy Bartell, as always, with the World Test Championship final starting on Wednesday, has the new ball.
How exciting is that, Tom? Yeah, no, I've got Nick Blakey, of course. The Swans, a lot of their key players have been down, and Nick Blakey probably hasn't had the year that he had last year. And so Lizzie got busy on the weekend against the Tigers, and I loved in the first half of the game in particular where he got on the end a lot of ball, but a lot of ball coming through the middle of the ground, and there's no better sight than the Lizzie just wiggling through the middle of the ground and using that beautiful left foot. What do you have? 34 touches, career high, 31 kicks. Oh. So really damaging as well. 8 inside forward 50s, 916 metres gained. So I love those inside forward 50s, especially from a half-back or a defender. That's showing me that you're getting up involved in the game.
Well, what he did, Jimmy, he actually had a starting position on a man, beat him, and then attacked. Whereas what he's been doing the last few weeks is actually doing not starting on a man, not getting the ball and beating it. So that's the way to get back your form. Go and beat someone and then attack.
I was interested to listen to Mitch Duncan on ABC radio over the weekend talk about Tom Stewart's bump, and he said that Nigel Lappin, who's a coach at the Cats, actually advises the players not to bump at all. But this, surely, Jimmy and Hurdy, is just about the perfect bump into Noah Anderson's ribs.
So why then did it become such a talking point if you said it was a perfect bump?
It's a talking point because Noah Anderson goes down and spends time in hospital because he's injured. But
lots of players get injured in a game of football. I'm just asking.
You know why? It's because you never see it. You very rarely see a bump like that these days.
He's hit his head on the ground as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just curious. A lot of people said it was a perfect bump. Well, if it's a perfect bump in some people's eyes, well, why were we talking about it?
Yeah, fair enough. That's no worries at all. I think very rarely you see a perfect bump these days. It's the fact it's an unusual situation. The Tigers, they have a bye now, Hurdy. Mid-season stock take. Before I get your thoughts on them, this is Adam Uze being fairly critical of his team after yesterday's loss to the Sydney Swans.
But yeah, really disappointing middle part of the game and just wasn't up to AFL standard. And yeah, like I said, the middle 2 quarters were not up to standard. We know that there might be some pain along the way, and I've said it all along, it might not be pain in certain games, but it might be in quarters. Like the second quarter, I don't think we've played any worse for the year.
Refreshingly honest, halfway point of the season for the Tigers. How do you rate them at the moment, and what do you want to see for them in the back half of the year?
From what everyone was thinking they were going to do at the start of the year, I think they've been outstanding. I think 3 wins. I think people were talking about they won't win a game. Uze can't coach. There's no presence. There's no aura. Been really terrific. Now, what I'd like to see is a bit of Jimmy's theory. I mean, Jimmy's got this theory on percentage. He's had it for North Melbourne all along, and I'm starting to agree with him that this is what we want to see. So their percentage at the moment is 69.4. We want to see them get to a percentage of 80.
Right.
2 more wins, no more. And finish in second last, then get pick 2 and pick 3, and away they go, set up for the next 10 years of the Tigerland.
And set themselves up.
Yep, and they've been able to play a lot of their young stars. A young star who creates a lot of attention for different reasons, Tom, is Jack Ginnivan. I think we've highlighted him before on this show, his forward craft and his IQ on the forward line. And I've just noticed, maybe it's just me overthinking it, but I've noticed being at the last couple of Hawthorn's games is his roll across the forward line, the half-forward line there, and his ability to get to the opposition's best and most attacking half-back flanker, because while they're taking off and running, he actually can find space in the front half and inside forward 50, and his last couple of weeks have been exceptional. 30 and 3, of course, against the Pies, and then he's had over 20 and 2 goals, but mainly being matched up to the opposition's most attacking half-back flanker.
it's a fantastic role. If you can attack off a great defender and actually kick goals and create goals, it's very hard to stop.
And an example why Sam Mitchell did the right thing, dropping to the VFL, resetting his season, and good analysis why he's playing so well now. He also kicked a goal the other night when he showed the ball to Bailey Dale on the way in. This incensed some of the Dogs fans, I'd imagine, as well at the time. From a media perspective, Hurdy, I've got no issue, and I can't imagine any of us being too critical of him on this desk. But tell us what you'd say if you were coaching him.
Well, I would say I'd rather you didn't. Only because what if he drops it? It's not the insult. It's a bit of byplay to the opposition. But imagine in a grand final he's running along and he does that. The ball falls out of your hand. That would just kill your team. So I'd just say kick the goal, then celebrate, then go up to the opposition and torment them. But until that ball goes through the goals, don't torment the opposition.
What would you say as a teammate of Jack Ginnivan?
Oh, well,
Maybe Troll didn't like it, but Dylan Moore did. So we like the fact that this is a discussion in the game.
yeah, as a teammate, I'm probably still catching my breath back near the middle of the ground while he's sprinting, and so I'm not overly phased. If I was to err on a side, it'd be similar to Hurdy. Kick the goal first, and then we can do whatever we like.
And as long as he knows, and he does know, that that's coming back. Next time they play the Bulldogs, I bet you they're in their face. There's a little bit more incentive, but...
no big issue.
No big issue.
Adds to the pageantry of the entire game.